Hola, hola, muy buenas tardes a todos, donde quiera que estén, donde quiera que se encuentren. Mi nombre es Flor Rubina, soy directora ejecutiva de CCDOC. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos en esta última charla de hoy y también la última charla de Conecta, para cerrar estos 10 días de actividades que esperamos hayan sido muy provechosas para todos los que formaron parte de ellas. Hemos querido concluir con una charla muy inspiradora y entretenida también, que hemos titulado Promoción audiovisual en tiempos del dominio digital. Todos los que trabajamos en el ámbito audiovisual sabemos cuán importante es contar con un buen tráiler, una de las piezas fundamentales para promover cualquier película. Esto es tal vez una de las pocas cosas que no han cambiado mucho durante la pandemia. Para profundizar más en estas piezas tan importantes como breves, tenemos el placer de contar con Jeremy Workman, editor experto, director creativo de Wheelhouse Creative y gran amigo de Chile, ya que acaba de terminar un taller especializado para editores chilenos, que lo tuvo pegado a la pantalla los últimos 4 meses, y contó también con el apoyo de Corfo a través de las becas de Capital Humano. Hi, Jeremy.
Hey everyone.
Hey. Antes de darle la palabra a Jeremy, les recuerdo que esta charla tiene traducción simultánea. Pueden acceder a ella seleccionando el idioma en el icono del mundo, en la parte baja de la pantalla de Zoom. También les recuerdo que todas nuestras actividades públicas cuentan con lengua de señas para sordos, así que saludamos también a Paulina, que nos acompaña hoy aquí. Thanks for being here today, Jeremy, showing all your knowledge, and I leave you alone.
Good. Ready to roll?
Yes, ready.
Excellent. Nice. Well, hey everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It should be very interesting and something that I think is worthwhile for every filmmaker. This will be a neat conversation for anyone really involved in the business of making movies, as well as everybody creatively involved in movies. So it's just a very sort of all-encompassing look that we will talk about marketing in these age, of digital dominance. And it's something that I talk a lot about, as Flor mentioned. I run a company in New York City that is called Wheelhouse Creative. I'll even put it in the chat. You could all go check out our website, where we work with a number of distributors, mostly, American distributors, but as well internationally. And we work with a lot that are releasing documentaries. So I know there's a very high, we're going to approach this looking at documentaries, just since Connecta is so much focusing on documentaries. But we work on all kinds of movies. We work on narratives, tons of documentaries, big movies, small movies, mostly indie movies. We don't really work on big Hollywood movies. That is by choice. We really focus on international movies and documentaries and independent films. So my background is I've been involved in working on movie trailers for many years. I first started doing Hollywood trailers, where I worked on some big franchises, big movies, and I was the trailer editor on those. And then I soon left that world to start my own company, where, as I said, we focus on smaller movies and independent movies, with a particular stress on documentary films. I'm also a documentary filmmaker. I've made 4 features. I have a new one coming out this year. So that also very much informs my approach and my thoughts. And I constantly think about using marketing and using trailers in all kinds of ways through the course of a movie's life. So what I think we're going to talk about today, and as you probably can already tell, I talk very fast and I can also talk very loud. but I will talk very fast. And I think I'll just sort of talk a little about an overview about trailers in this age, both in terms of their creative approach, but also what I think will be very useful is a kind of a functionality, like what is sort of the function? How do we use trailers? Where do we use them? When can we really take advantage of them? And that's something that I think we're going to also talk about. So there'll be a whole sort of different approach that we'll talk about. I think we're gonna definitely open it up for questions towards the end. But I think we're gonna do it where if you have a question, you should write it in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that as well. So to just to kind of launch us a little bit into this is trailers are increasingly important. I'm sort of probably not telling anything that you don't already know. They've become more important. When I first started, trailers were obviously something that you would see in the movies, right? You would sit down with your popcorn and the trailers would come on. And over the course of my career, trailers got more and more immediate. And now, of course, with social media and streaming platforms, trailers are even that much more important. So many streaming platforms now, including Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of them, HBO, all of them, have a button where you could watch the trailer and then decide if you're going to watch it. So it can really impact the way that people are sort of deciding on whether they're going to see your movie. The other thing that I talk quite a lot about, particularly when I'm working with documentary filmmakers, is there's a lot of movies out there, and we can't be shy, and we have to sort of go at it and try to get our movies seen. And it sometimes, for a lot of filmmakers I know, marketing your movie and making a trailer, you don't really want to do it, or you feel like it's not the same, you're not using the same approach as you were when you were making the film. But you really have to get over that, because trailers are increasingly important. As I've said, as anyone already knows, you might make a documentary or a small movie. It might be seen, if you're lucky, a few thousand times, maybe 10,000 times. However, that trailer for your movie might be seen 1,000,000 times, if not more. So it's really the card for your movie, and it becomes increasingly important. It's important to engage an audience with it. That's something that when I know Flor mentioned that I did this workshop with a lot of Chilean editors this whole winter, and I was very, very impressed with their talent and their skill, and their filmmaking was tremendous. But a lot of them were not used to saying, like, okay, we have to really take our movies and market them. We have to really put them out there and engage the audience. And that's something that I talk about enormously with both beginning filmmakers and distributors, is how do you engage an audience? How do you make material that really connects your audience to what they're seeing? We look, and I'm going to talk a little about the approach, the creative approach on how we do that. The other thing that we are going to talk a lot about is using trailers in the whole sort of lifespan of your movie's project. When I first started, this again, it tells you how much things have changed. When I first started, the movie would be coming out. It would have a date of release, and you would make your trailer and release the trailer 6 weeks before the due date, or the release date. And everything started to crumble at that point after that. Now, trailers are used at every single stage of your production. Every single stage, literally at the beginning stages before you've shot, to the material where you're starting to shoot, creating sales trailers, fundraising trailers, market trailers to engage distributors, trailers to engage sales agents, trailers to engage film festivals, and then the trailers continue to evolve from there. So we are going to also hopefully look at some trailers that show those different sides. think that's about it. I also want to mention, for those watching on YouTube, you could certainly ask a question in the chat as well. And Camilo will pass me that question. So everybody should feel free to ask any questions. No one is allowed to ask the question that I've gotten a million times, which is, do I watch the movie before I do a trailer? What do you think? I probably watch the movie 20 times before I do a trailer. So no one's allowed to ask that question. All right, let's move on. I'm going to start talking a little. I'm just going to jump in. So a lot of people start wondering, well, how, one of the things that I think a lot of people have to sort of overcome is that trailers are hard. They are very tricky. And it's not easy. And sometimes the filmmakers are not the best person to do a trailer. And sometimes the feature editors are not the best person to do a trailer. But it is something that you have to sort of fight through a little bit and really sort of embrace and say, okay, let's just sort of try to do the best one we can. The other thing that I very much suggest is that trailers are to be seen by audiences. So it makes no use to do a trailer that's just sort of for your internal purposes. Trailers are for people to see, and they are going to be judging it and to look at it. So first thing I want to do is just like, well, how do you even wrap your head around a trailer? There's some people that don't even have an idea of how to do it sometimes. And what I often say, and we're going to be looking at slides and examples and all kinds of, things, is really lean on the traditional setup. One thing that we talk quite a lot about is 3-act structure, even within a trailer. That even in the 2 minutes, and one question that some people ask me is, well, how long is a trailer? Let's just say it's 2 minutes for your project. And one of the things that we're often trying to do is bring a sense of 3-act structure. This is not, 3-act structure has been around for centuries. This isn't something that was invented recently. This isn't something that was come up by some focus group in a Hollywood studio. This is something that's been around for literally since the ancient Greeks. So we try to integrate 3-act structure within trailers, even if they're 60 seconds, even if they're, sometimes even if they're shorter. We really think about how to tell a story with a little bit of a structure. I'm going to just throw some slides at you. And by the way, sometimes I may pop off on my video, so don't get alarmed. I'm not disappearing. Sometimes my share screen doesn't always work. 1 second. So this is another example of 3-act structure, right? Which is something that we've all kind of know, and you've heard, and we've sort of talked about it, or you've read screenplay stories or thought about drama, usually that there's a little bit of a prelude, and then we get into exposition where we set up character, and then we get into conflict in the middle, and then Act 3 is resolution, right? So what even this basic form that we're all sort of familiar with, you're all familiar with this from watching movies and seeing plays and, thinking about story, but we really want to try to impart that within a trailer form so that what modern trailer style is, and I know these are, a lot of this stuff, I don't want to get too, too much, as we would say, in the weeds. But modern trailer form is this. This is what 90% of the trailers that we're seeing coming out of Hollywood and in the United States and Europe as well. 90% of the trailers are sort of functioning in this way. Okay, where you have what would be called a cold open, where there's an opening section, and then it goes into Act 1, setting up the character, Act 2, setting up the conflict, building towards a climax. Not much different from that first slide I sent you, right? Where we're also looking at it in the same way, Act 1, and then there's a turning point, Act 2, same approach. Let me just make sure that Susanna, that you could translate this for everybody if they need translation. Good. And then, as I said, this is also sort of modern style, and you could also translate this one as well. So cool, thank you. So we're really trying to think about that even in terms of when we create a trailer. So that if we look at a modern trailer, and I'm just gonna pop on some, I'll just, I work on so many trailers, but I'll just sort of pop on something that might be appropriate in this way. And Carlos, I see your question. I will get to it. This was one that we all were talking about before class. This is a trailer, and I'm just going to jump around. I'm not, I'm kind of, let's assume this is going to be a little bit of a non-linear approach. We're going to just sort of look at this overview and kind of jump around a little bit. But this was a trailer we were talking about at the beginning of class. It's a trailer that my company did last year. I'm going to show it now because it has Spanish subtitles, so we don't have to listen to the translation. But you'll notice that before I play it, and I'm just going to scan through it, it's about a priest who is in the country of Madagascar, right? And this priest is this sort of, noble man who's really trying to help this land. So I want you to really, as we watch it, don't just watch it to say, oh, do I like this movie or do I not like this movie? That's something that we have to sort of get out of our heads right now. We have to really think about how we're constructing this and why we're constructing this. So I want you to, as we watch it this time, I want you to think about what I said, that there is a 3-act structure, that you'll feel sections. There'll be an introduction, right? And you're going to see it. You're going to see an introduction that sets up Madagascar. We're going to have this man as a prelude, right? It goes into an act 1 where it introduces the story. It has an act 2 where there's all this conflict. And then there's an act 3 where it sort of builds to a climax. So why don't we watch that? And we're gonna, like I said, we'll watch a few trailers in the next 90 minutes or so. They'll be we'll jump around a little bit, but it'll at least allow us to kind of get a handle, a little of an approach. And for this one, like I said, we have Spanish subtitles, so you don't have to translate it. Here we go.
J'ai vu cette décharge-là avec des centaines, voire un millier de personnes, avec les enfants, plein d'enfants. J'ai dit, mon Dieu, aide-moi à faire quelque chose pour ces enfants. Aide-moi à faire quelque chose pour ces enfants.
Nearly 80% of the population lives on less than $2 a day.
Almost half the children under the age of 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition.
Combien de vivants avez-vous aidé? Combien de personnes en détresse?
Alors nous avons construit aujourd'hui 18 villages et nous avons aussi construit une centaine d'écoles dans tout Madagascar qui avons construit nos villages.
La vie, c'est un combat, et pour arriver à un idéal, il faut renoncer à quelque chose. Mon rêve, c'est de devenir un jour, être joueur de football en Argentine. Alors, ce prêtre-là avait 80 ans. Et il me dit, mon fils, c'est pas possible, il faut choisir une chose ou l'autre. J'ai choisi d'être devenu prêtre.
L'extrême pauvreté est une prison qui tue l'âme et un temps où ça doit suffire.
J'ai vécu 6 soulèvements et chaque fois, on va être le meilleur, on va être le plus vrai et on n'a jamais vu ça. On ne voit jamais le résultat. On ne peut pas alors amener un peuple vers l'abîme. Être la base de toutes nos actions. On y va avec l'armée des enfants. jamais ce combat ne cessera pas.
So obviously, you know, there's a lot going on here, but I want you to try to think about this in a very kind of elemental way and just the basics. You know, when I talk to beginning editors, when they're starting to think about trailers, I say, think about this in the most simple way. You know, don't try to overcomplicate it. Think about you're building something out of Legos, you know, like Legos, the toys. And in some ways, if we look at this trailer again, you'll see there's an opening introduction that sets up Madagascar. It sets up the element. It sets up this guy. It's a little bit of this man. There's a little bit of a tease about when he came, and then it launches into Act 1, right? Which is just what I said about the story structure. And Act 1 is this setup. We introduce text that sets up this world. You know, I had a copywriter write up A Land of Crisis, a revolution of hope, right? And that introduces this story in a very basic level. I'm sure you noticed that there was music changes, right? That's what a trailer does. Every time we watch a trailer online, there's music changes. The music changes are helping a viewer move through those sections, those acts. There's a middle act where things got a little personal with him, and then it launches into this end part where it kind of builds into this final Act 3. So it's all sort of very much grounded in traditional storytelling, right? And it is, once you start getting a sense of saying like, oh, okay, trailers follow traditional storytelling. Once you sort of get a handle on that, everything sort of becomes a little easier. I'm going to show just a couple more. These are just some basic random trailers. Some of these, this one I thought was neat because it was Argentinian. So it was an Argentinian movie, and so a lot of it is in Spanish. And I want you, again, this isn't a question of do you like this movie or do you like this trailer? I want you to look at it in terms of story and telling the story in a very modular way. Do you guys know that word, modular, where it's separated into chunks? So this was a movie called The Orchid Seller. It's a documentary. It premiered, and this also gets into a neat question that I will definitely be bringing up in the next hour, which is, when do you have a trailer? Well, for this movie, they released this trailer before it premiered at a film festival. So this was a movie that was going to premiere at the Venice Film Festival. This was a couple years ago. And they decided to release this trailer right before Venice. There's other times when I'm working on trailers that are released when the movie's coming out, you know, in theaters. And this was a case where they were using this trailer to help find a distributor and international buyers. Trailers are enormously helpful when you have a movie that you're trying to engage international buyers. So this was one. So let's watch this again, also thinking about the story and the structure. Oops, here we go.
Mi vocación de pintor, en gran parte pienso, se debe a que cuando pinto no pienso.
Estoy arreglando el taller ahorita de esta manera un poco rara porque tenemos proyectado para el año que viene una exposición que se va a llamar Vigas los Comienzos.
Aquí falta un cuadro muy importante, que era el vendedor de orquídeas. Un personaje con el hombro, una rama llena de orquídeas. Eso está desaparecido.
Hay que conseguirlo. Sería formidable para Osvaldo guardar esta imagen de Reinaldo.
Reinaldo, el hermano más parecido a mí, se tomó un frasco de chiconal y se quedó dormido. Aló, tocayo, ando buscando un viejo cuadro. Si dije algo que te cayó mal, te pido perdón, coño.
Hay que recordar que fue la última vez que Reinaldo le sirvió de modelo para pintar.
Ellos andan buscando un cuadro. En el Ateneo no lo has visto tú por casualidad. No hay eso.
No, ahí estamos. Imagínate cuántas cosas pueden ocurrir a un cuadro que tiene 60 años.
Sin los recuerdos no somos nada. Lo único que queda es eso.
So that trailer, like some of these other ones that, you know, I've already been talking about, is really sort of built in these very basic stages, right? It sets up this idea of a painter, right? And this is what I would call basic, as we've said, basic trailer structure. We have an opening where we set up this painter, right? Right, just like that trailer with the priest. We set up something right at the opening. We come into setting up an act one about this particular story. We even have cards that say a legendary artist, right? A missing masterpiece. We're very much reducing what the movie is. I know all filmmakers, it's not fun to reduce your movie in these ways, but we have to connect with the audience, right? So then we build that story, and then all of a sudden we have a little stop here. We then go into act two. There's a change of music, right? Because we talked about how there's now a different act, just like in a movie. It goes into act two, and that builds and builds, and that becomes more conflict driven, right? And then we come into our act three, which is now more evocative and poetic and gets into more of the themes. So both these trailers that I've showed you, they're functioning in these very sort of building block story way. Now, the reason why we do that, the reason why we tell stories in this way is because viewers, as we've learned for centuries now, really can engage when it's presented to them in this way. Okay, so with a trailer, you want to engage them. You want your viewers to respond. You want audiences to respond. And this is a little bit of a way to get people excited about that, to build it in this kind of 3-act structure. Always people ask, well, how do we be careful about showing too much, right? How do we not give away the whole movie? I have a couple answers to that. One is we have to be careful, right, to not give away the whole movie, but also try not to worry so much about that. I don't think any of these two trailers that I've just showed you, you're even thinking about that. You know, you're just sort of watching these trailers and looking and experiencing these stories, and you're not really thinking about, is this giving away too much? So I would just try to, suggest don't worry about that so much. Let me show a couple more. And again, if you have questions, fire them you could just write them in the chat. Maybe I'll get to, I could get to them. I know for people watching on YouTube, you could also write questions in the chat as well. But I don't want to throw too many, I want to throw some trailers that might have some more impact with you guys. This was a trailer done by one of the students in our workshop. And as Flor mentioned, I just led a very long, weeks-long workshop with great Chilean editors. And we really went through the process of editing trailers. And let me tell you, there are some great trailer editors in Chile. So if you guys are thinking about your need to find trailer editors for yourself, there were some great ones in our class. I'd be happy to point out which ones I thought could be worthwhile for you. But there was a number of really interesting cases where we talked about these ideas of how do you structure it? How do you make a trailer? And a lot of people were coming without a lot of experience. One of a great trailer that was done in the class is for a movie that is, I believe, out in, has already come out in Chile. It's called Haide, and a great documentary about this woman who, during the Pinochet regime, was forced to have an abortion, and that now years later she is trying to seek justice for this. So this is a movie maybe you guys have heard of. As I said, it's already come out. There's already trailers out. However, in our class, we sort of said, like, let's not even worry about those trailers. Let's make our own trailer. Let's try to make the best trailer we can for this movie. So we really incorporated some of these things that I'm already talking about. Building a 3-act structure, creating a story that connects, builds in a layers, has Act 1 setting things up, Act 2 conflict, Act 3 a little bit of an overview. And this was a tremendous trailer by somebody who didn't have a lot of experience, but really worked hard. His name was Francisco. He did a great trailer. Let's watch it. Again, it's not the trailer that was used for this movie, but you'll see immediately the things that I've already spent 15 minutes talking about just in this trailer. Here we go.
Sebastián tiene un lugar en el mundo, en el universo. No se merecía en absoluto quedar entre las paredes del cuartel Silvapalmo.
Yo nací, me crié y me eduqué porteña. Cuando tú crecías, ojalá te enamoraras de un cadete. El orgullo que sentíamos era enorme.
En septiembre de 1973, Aideo Berroiter era militante y dirigente universitaria.
Esa Marina un día decidió entrar en mi casa, tomar detenida a mi madre, tomar a mi hija, secuestrarlas para lograr mi entrega.
Y la puse a disposición del Servicio de Inteligencia Naval.
Yo soy sobreviviente de prisión política y tortura, y como tal tuve una serie de lesiones muy graves.
Fui al kiosco de la esquina, miro con una escritura plana completa, me hicieron perder mi hijo. Tenemos que hacer algo ya.
De pronto este señor ya lo había puesto a disposición de una corte.
Yo vi cuáles fueron los efectos físicos de lo que te pasó. Yo me acuerdo de tus cicatrices.
Siempre pudo pelear en medio de la dictadura y mantener una casa.
Metida en este maldito lugar con mi hijo Sebastián que llevaba en el vientre, que se queda aquí para siempre.
Nunca dejar de luchar. Tú tienes una obligación moral de hacer lo imposible.
No te preocupes por mí. Recuerda que yo no tengo miedo de morirme.
So, like I said, just a very, very good presentation. It has 3 pieces of music, which a lot of trailers have 3 pieces of music. Why? Because it's coming back to this idea that trailers are sort of built in this act structure. If we, again, just not to belabor this, because I know you're probably already getting just heard enough about this, but that this trailer that you just saw for that film follows this to a T. It follows this exactly. It sets her up. It builds this turning point. It comes into Act 2, where now she's decided that she's going to take on the justice. She's going to meet up with this journalist. Then there's this sort of end court case where the chords come, and then there's an act 3 with another music change. Notice how it also goes in different feels. It feels like a thriller at the beginning. It feels like a drama in the middle, and it feels like this sort of beautiful poetic film in the last section. So again, it's sort of working on all these levels, and it's just really just a great presentation. That was by an editor named Francisco Espinoza, who had no experience doing trailers, but we worked on this for a number of weeks and got it really good. So, you know, part of the approach is like, well, what do? By creating a really good trailer, by having these really good elements, you start opening up possibility for your movie, right? So obviously you could use that trailer. It could go on YouTube. It could be seen. It could go in theaters. It could help generate interest in the film. It could also drive sales. As I mentioned at the top of our class, so many streaming platforms have a button that says trailer. You watch it and decide if you're going to see it. You could also use that trailer now to share it with international buyers. So you could suddenly take that to Europe and to an international documentary market. And it looks really polished. It looks really audience friendly. It looks really like a strong film. And suddenly you're now using these trailers in ways to really expand beyond just, you know, hey, I made a movie and now I want to have a piece of, you know, I want a trailer. You're using the trailers to really help sell the movie. There was another really nice trailer done in the class that I will also show. It's nice to get to show the trailers in the class. First of all, a lot of them are in Spanish, so that's good. But also just they really put in a lot of work and they did some really great stuff. This was a trailer from an editor named Valeria Valenzuela, and it was for a documentary called Frontera. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but I think that's it. And, you know, it's a slower movie. So for all the people in our crowd who are like, yeah, you know, it's hard, you know, I'm working on something that's a lot slower or it doesn't have a lot of production value. Well, this is just a very sort of quiet documentary about a conflict in a Mapuche culture. It's in Chile, obviously in Chile. And, you know, it's just a really lovely trailer. It, again, follows this structure that we've talked about. You'll see it has 3 acts. There's setup in the middle. There's there's setup at the beginning, there's conflict in the middle, and then there's sort of this resolution where it brings it all together at the end. You know, very simple. Trailers in some ways are not that complicated. Here, let's have a look at this one.
La tierra hay que ponerle escritura, el traspaso, porque es una causa noble para nosotros. Nos estamos quitando, estamos pidiendo que se nos devuelva lo que era nuestro.
A lo que entraron a la cocina al tiro fue como 5, encapuchado todo, pues, y yo los vi todos listos, pues, con la arma así. Yo llegué hasta cerrar los ojos y decirle, ¿qué mapuches son ustedes?
Estamos
así son los mapuches.
pidiendo que se nos devuelva.
Y me paro y que la casa estaba en llamas.
También según dicen que era porque el lonco era vendido. O sea, la gente no sé qué significa ser vendido. No tengo ningún compromiso con ningún político. Soy libre, soberano. Todos los loncos tenían su fuerte. Ese fuerte tiene que ser respetado.
So, you know, just a very nice presentation, really showcases the beauty of the movie, doesn't rush. has some great stuff also where, you know, it tells you a lot of the pedigree. It shows the film festival laurels. These cards here, you might be noticing that a lot of times we're integrating story cards. A lot of these trailers I'm showing you, we're seeing this kind of text. Doesn't mean that every trailer has it, but it is something that helps us tell the story in a gratifying and a compressed way, and helps us sort of get through it. I think pretty much all the trailers I've showed have that. So it's often an approach that we would use. So this is also one that's very, very nicely done by Valeria Valenzuela, where she was able to really sort of create those story sections and how effective that is. And yeah, I think that it's neat just sort of seeing how it's a different kind of movie. It's probably slower than some of the other trailers that you're used to seeing, but yet how effective it is. It invites you in. And what that story structure helps do is really connect a viewer with what they're watching and seeing it. So some people say to me, well, you know, okay, I'd rather not build such a big story. And, you know, there's some cases where, you know, you might have other elements that you want to showcase in your trailer, like maybe there's text or graphics, right? And that's something that we're often doing. You know, sometimes there's great reviews. Let me show you this one. This is, and it just shows like there's a lot of different approaches, even though I know I'm talking a lot about, well, we want to have a whole story structure in there. There are different approaches, you know, and there's different ways to do it. This is a trailer that I just finished. It's for a Hungarian movie. So it is subtitled in English. It is a movie that they think has a chance to win an Oscar for Best Foreign Film. It's got a crazy long title. But this was a case where we didn't want to do so much kind of basic story. We wanted to show a lot of the quotes and all the pedigree. This was a movie that was in, you know, a lot of great film festivals. So this was something that we wanted to showcase. However, and I'm going to play it in a second, even in this presentation, you're going to still feel that story build. It's going to still have that act 1, act 2, act 3, even though it's subtle, even though it's very much about these quotes, it's still going to have this story structure. And that's something that is just so essential for every trailer. So let's have a watch of this one. And yeah, here we go.
Körülbelül 2 hónappal ezelőtt egy New Jersey-ben tartott konferencián megismerkedtem valakivel. Azt éreztem, hogy megvan. Én ezt kerestem. János! Hát, szia!
Azt hiszem, összetéveszt valakivel. Ne haragudjon, most látom ment életemben először. Bocsánat. Mi jut erről az eszébe?
Azt, hogy elment az eszem. Hogy annyira vágytam erre az egészre, hogy kitaláltam mindenestől. És olyan részletesen kiszíneztem, hogy végül magam is azt hittem meg.
Minek akar haza költözni? Mi a fenét keresni maga itt?
Magánéletjogból jöttem haza. Ő az. Férje? Igen. Nem fogja elmondani a teszt eredményét? Ennek az a megérzése.
Én is orvos. Jól tudja, mit érnek a megérzések. Előfordul, hogy az utcán meglátok valakit, és az az érzésem, hogy ismerem.
Nem tudom, lehet-e szerelemnek nevezni valamit, de velem ilyen még nem volt.
So in that 2 minutes, right, if I were to tell you that story that we told, we set up, right, it's act one, that there's this woman and she was at a conference and she meets a man and she falls in love with the man. And then the end of act one is she goes up to the man and he doesn't know who she is. That's the end of act one. Now we have act two, where she's not sure if she's crazy or what's going on. And then it gets more and more intense, and it leads us to act three, where now she's starting to really question what's going on. And now she starts following the man. And that's the story. And we've built that out in a trailer using all those quotes and all the ways to sort of showcase this movie and what's great about the movie. And we let the movie speak for itself. We're not doing all kinds of tricks and editing style. It's very slow. So there's some filmmakers that are constantly worried that trailers are going to misrepresent their film, but we don't do any of that here. We're just showing what's great about the film. And it sort of builds in this very satisfying way. Again, not giving you all the answers. So it also does this great thing where you're not exactly sure what's going on. You don't have all the answers, and it just creates intrigue. So that trailer was debuted a couple weeks ago. It's already been seen probably 1 million times online. The movie came out in the United States last week. It's already a front runner for Best Foreign Film. And all of that is generated and helped generated by the fact that we're sort of working to create the trailer material in the proper way. So there's, first of all, I know I'm probably, everybody's head is exploding with me throwing so much information at them, but is there immediate, questions that anybody has or wants to write in the chat that, maybe is relevant to what I've already been discussing? Some people ask me questions like, oh, well, are the filmmakers involved? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Are the distributors making decisions? Sometimes distributors have a lot of ideas about how a movie, presenting a movie, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes people ask, how long does a trailer take to make? And it all depends. It could take 2 weeks. I think that Hungarian movie we just played, I did that whole process was 2 or 3 weeks. 2 weeks. And there's other trailers that I work on for months. And some people ask, how many versions do we go through on a trailer? Again, it depends. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 versions. Sometimes there's a lot of input from all kinds of people and distributors and sales agents and exhibitors, and it could go to version 20. So it all depends. There's no right answer. The right answer is to make a trailer that is effective and that makes people want to see the movie. If you've done a trailer that you think is great, but that people watch and they don't really want to see the movie, then I guess it's not that great of a trailer, because a trailer's function, and I say this a lot to the students that I work with. In fact, I probably said it 1,000 times when we were working in this workshop that we just did. A trailer is not a synopsis, okay? It is not a summary. If it is not, you're not making a synopsis. It's not a 2-minute short version of your movie. It is a 2-minute piece that is aimed to get people interested and wanting to see your movie. And that's what its function is. And that's what you really have to think about when you're working on trailers, is how do you get people excited? How do you intrigue people? And those are the questions you want to sort of answer for yourself. Let's show more trailers. So this was, pretty soon I will show a couple more trailers, but then I also want to show shorter versions and different kinds of trailers and how we're using all these pieces across the board. One thing I will say, as you probably all very much know, when we now have that trailer for, let's say, that Hungarian movie, that's a 2-minute trailer, right? But we may take that trailer, now we may make shorter versions of it. We may make a 60-second trailer. We may make a 30-second trailer. One of the really valuable aspects of developing good trailer content is now you could start using it to create shorter content, right? And taking stuff and saying, okay, well, we did a longer trailer. Let's now start doing smaller versions, right? Because that can be enormously helpful in terms of getting your film out with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and even TikTok now. It's now more and more about trying to kind of put material out in different capacities. So if we now look at some trailers that are shorter, okay, we'll start seeing that now suddenly those 2 minutes might come down to 60 seconds or 90 seconds, right? Or 30 seconds, perhaps. Here's a trailer that we did. Let me see if, maybe what I'll do, this might be a neat little exercise. I'll show you the trailer. That's the 2-minute trailer for this movie. And then we'll watch a 30-second piece of this movie. Stand by. Hold on 1 second. While I pull this up, this is another documentary, and I know we're seeing a lot of documentaries. If you want to see some more, we'll get into some narrative stuff as well in a second. But this was a documentary about a chef in Mexico. She's actually a British woman who is let me find this trailer. Well, how about this? Well, I will show the shorter version first, and then we'll watch the longer version after, so I can pull it up. All right. So this is a 30-second trailer. That is the trailer for a documentary about a British chef living in Mexico. And this was a documentary that came out last year. Very successful documentary here in the United States. So let's watch this. This is 30 seconds.
Let's do guacamole.
How can it be that a white British woman knows more about Mexican food than anybody?
She put thousands of miles moving around Mexico and doing her research.
Yo creo que Diana es una mexicana de alma, de corazón.
You just go on doing what you know you want to do. And at some point, you'll make your mark.
So that is a 30-second trailer that was used, right? It's just 30 seconds. It could go right onto social media. It could go on television, and it sort of conveys everything in the movie in this very sort of clear way. Interesting, and I won't get into it too much, but it still has a lot of those story points going on. There's still an act structure. But now if we look at the trailer of this, you'll start seeing how it sort of differentiates. This is now a 2-minute trailer for that same movie, right?
Let's do, guess what? Guacamole. Keep your hands off the jalapenos, por favor. People say don't like cilantro. Please don't invite them. No, you don't put garlic in. It's a texture into your food. We don't want baby food all the time.
I think everybody that meets Diane, they never forget they met her.
How can it be that a white British woman knows more about Mexican food than anybody?
I've had a very funny life. Nobody has really said, you do this or you do that. Somebody will suggest something, I'm off.
She put thousands of miles moving around Mexico and doing her research.
I would ask anybody I could in the market where they came from, what their family were eating. I'd always get a recipe, always get a recipe. Paul obviously was the great love of my life. Certainly wasn't the traditional housewife. I never wanted children. I would hate to bring up a little me. Can you imagine? Oh, The greenhouse is not ornamental. It's to take some more exotic things that I can't buy in the market and need for my regional recipes. This is my jewel box.
Diana doesn't care if people like her. She cares that these things get remembered and continued.
Read my books and learn, please. Most people buy land here, and the first thing they do is to cut down the trees. Not here.
Yo creo que Diana es una mexicana de alma, de corazón.
I think she's a legend. You just go on doing what you know you want to do. And at some point, the tide will turn, and you'll make your mark.
She to me was like an Indiana Jones of food, trying to search for that diamond that is somewhere in the mountains of Mexico. And she will non-stop until she will find it.
Because I love to eat and I love to cook.
Diana, how spicy are the cascabeles?
Go and wash your hands right now. Well, you might forget, and you go to the John or something, and by golly, you will know.
So that's a trailer we did. Again, follows along a structure. It sets it up. It has different music changes. It has a whole sort of story structure built in. But yet when you saw the 30-second version of that, we took it and compressed it and made it so that it's still showcasing what's great about the film, her personality, the great reviews, the fact that this was in, some major film festivals, and it's audience, it's entertaining. We compressed it in that 30 seconds, but still managed to kind of keep those aspects. So that 30-second piece becomes something that you're now using during your campaign. A lot of times I'll talk about, we'll talk about a campaign for a movie, meaning the whole sort of length of use of sharing your movie and showcasing your movie. And the other thing that's sort of neat that we're doing a lot more of, we're constantly trying to find ways to create content. So although we all know trailers as these 2-minute pieces, right? We're also looking for ways to create any kind of content that would just showcase what the movie is and what the movie's about and how to best present it. These could be interview pieces, featurettes. This is a term that, maybe I think you guys know. Here, I'll type it in, featurettes, like DVD extras. Here's an example. I'm not going to play it, but I'll just kind of scan through it. This was a great documentary called The Eagle Huntress, right? It's about this young woman. It came out a couple of years ago in Mongolia who trains eagles to hunt. And it was a very successful international documentary, very, very successful. So what we did is it has, we said, why don't we these are normal like featurettes. You guys have all seen featurettes. You've seen them as DVD extras. Well, we're creating these pieces also as part of its overall advertising campaign. So we'll interview the directors. We'll have them talk about the making. We'll show photographs. We'll just do basic to create basic content. We'll make this as a 5-minute piece. We'll make this as a 90-second piece. This is a making of for this movie, right? And we're spreading this around on Facebook. The distributor might say, hey, one of the producers is famous and has thousands and thousands of followers on Twitter. Let's have that producer release this on her Twitter. And that's what happened with that movie. There's a movie in the United States that just came out called Totally Under Control. It's about a documentary on the pandemic. We created content where we interviewed the director, right? And we created these kind of 2-minute pieces, 3-minute pieces that were about how they made the movie. It's using elements of the trailer, and it's using shots of the trailer, but they're all just sort of marketing pieces. And when we think about how we're presenting our movies to the world, we want a lot of content. Here's a neat kind of, and I know I'm jumping around, but just, you guys could probably hang with me on this. This was a movie that we had worked on last week, right? It's an acclaimed, this will be interesting to you all. This is an acclaimed international documentary called Noturno, which came out to the world. It came out maybe a week or so ago. And let me show you this. These are 30-second pieces that we created for Instagram. So as you can see, they're even square, right? We took the movie and we reformatted it for square. And I'll play it. Basically, there's no music in these. It's just shots with text. But these are all just for Instagram. So let me hit play on this. Right? And that's all that is, right? It doesn't use music. It doesn't obviously have a big story structure. It's just using like really beautiful content from the movie and intercutting that with quotes. Here's another one. It's just a variation of the same thing that you already saw, right? It's another one for Instagram. And that becomes another component of how, that movie is going to start being marketed to the world. I'll answer some quick questions and then I'll keep going. Let's see. Camilo asked, sorry, Camila, you're just translating for me. But Peppa Ruiz asked, did the trailers for cinema, are they different from the trailers on Netflix? Sometimes they are, but now more and more, the trailers for Netflix are just the trailers, right? The differentiation of trailers has become less and less. Now it's just, there's just trailers, there's just content, you're just making more and more material, and you're not really thinking about this one's for the theater and this one's for Netflix, because most movies now are being seen over streaming anyway. So you're just really thinking about that main audience. But it brings up an important point, which is that because of streaming services and because of this whole concept that I described at the beginning, where people can now click and decide if they want to watch something, it makes it so that trailers need to be that much more faster into their story. They need to move. They need to kind of get into it, the good stuff faster, because people have a remote control and they're clicking buttons. Another question is about these 30 seconds. There's a couple questions about when you make a 30-second piece. Here, I'll show you another 30 second because it's coming up for you guys. These 30-second trailers, this is one about here's one about a famous musician in America, also a documentary. And it's also a version of the trailer, but this is a 30-second trailer that's being used in social media and whatnot. And some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat are about like, well, does it really have 3 acts? I mean, probably these shorter versions might have 2 acts. There's probably a setup, and then it goes into some, complication, confrontation, development, and then it kind of ends at 30. So it's probably not a full 3-act structure, but it's a lot closer than you'd think. In some ways, it has a full story in it, even in 30 seconds. So here's another 30-second for a musician documentary.
Harry Chapin was one of the greatest storytellers of all time.
He wanted to change the world. And he did.
I remember thinking, that's such a cool line. Harry was telling his story.
What a lovely man, and how right was he?
He was like a saint, to the point of being a martyr.
He may have been the most unselfish person I've ever met.
May his song be sung.
So, you know, and this relates to Daniel Garcia's question about what to keep in the 30 seconds. Well, it was a question of we wanted to explain who this person was. So we needed the beginning of this 30 seconds to really just explain who he was. We wanted to show some of the famous people that are in the documentary. So we show this guy, Billy Joel. He's very famous in the United States. And then we get into some other famous people, Bob Geldof, very famous. And then we kind of transition from this idea of he's a singer, you know, let's introduce this famous singer, to now by the end of the movie, let's set him up as this famous social, or this very important social activist. So there is a little trajectory of story. And then of course we end on Bruce Springsteen because we also want to showcase that he's in the documentary. So a lot of those decisions about what to include in there, those decisions start getting made for you. You only have 30 seconds, right? So gotta cut stuff out. You only have 2 minutes for the trailer. You gotta make it quicker. You gotta move it faster. Audiences are so used to seeing trailers. They've seen hundreds, okay? You have to remember that. An audience who's gonna watch your trailer has literally seen hundreds of trailers, hundreds. So they don't want they want you to move through it. They want you to show why your movie's good. They want to see what's so good about it. They don't want to sort of be delayed by the storytelling. So you have to sort of be aware of audience's reaction and expectation when you're working on a trailer. All right, let me keep firing away here, and I know I'm making everybody's heads explode with all this stuff. But I want to also get in a little bit about this idea of fundraising trailers, because at the beginning of our lecture, I talked about how trailers can be used in all kinds of capacities. It's not just for finished films. They could be used as fundraising pieces. They could be used as ways to get distributors interested, fundraisers interested. And I will show one from our class as well. Before I do that, I'm not going to play this because I'm not really supposed to play this, but I can at least scan through it. This is a movie that is premiering at Sundance this week. It was financed by a 4-minute trailer that we created. So we took footage that they had shot. They had not finished their movie. They had only shot maybe a couple weeks. We took that footage of their couple weeks and we turned it into like a trailer, like 3 minutes showing what they had. It's about a dance choreographer. And I'm just going to scan through it because I'm not really, I don't want to show much. So we created this little piece that's like a trailer. It's also a little like a documentary. And it basically highlights all what they've done. Here's another one that I could show. I could show this one a little bit more. And it shows this is another documentary about a dancer, and it shows the interviews they've got and the footage they got, and they only shot for about a month. And then we created a trailer. In this case, this was like a 4-minute trailer. And we sort of showcase what the movie was as a way for them to share the movie with financiers, with buyers, with international sales agents in order to raise money. So it becomes an enormously useful tool because now I have many documentary producers as well as narrative producers, scripted movies, who say, hey, we're in the development of a project. We have been working on a project. We don't have all the money to finish it, but we're developing it. Let's start thinking about how to use trailers as a way to share the movie. Now, the best example that I could show today is one from our class who gave us permission. This is from Eduardo Baeza, who is working on his own documentary that he is editing with his team. He's the editor. And it is a story about, it looks fascinating, right? And it's a story about Pinochet and how he was brought to London and then to brought to trial and somehow sort of escaped those trials. So this is for a movie that's not finished, right? They've only just started. And what he's done is he's created a trailer that has a full story structure, just like we've talked about, these 3 acts, that looks like a trailer, that looks like a movie that you absolutely want to see. And he's using this only with a little bit of footage that they've shot, because they haven't shot the whole movie, and archival footage. So let's watch this. Again, this is for a movie that isn't even finished.
Pinochet became the dictator par excellence.
Pinochet was a ruthless dictator, that's a fact.
It's very difficult to understand how you could reach those level of violence, really. It's very difficult.
Sentía un dios. No calcularon que en Inglaterra o en España los iban a procesar.
At last, they took his crown out from his hand.
I was in absolutely no doubt that Pinochet should stand trial in Spain.
I agree with them that Senator Pinochet does not have immunity from prosecution.
Él no decía que estaba detenido, él decía que estaba secuestrado.
Cualquier evento de crisis política o social en Chile ponía en riesgo nuestra transición democrática.
I think that his chances of being released without the active help of the Chilean government, he was presented as a poor, frail, old man, already senile.
Demencia vascular debido a lesiones cerebrales de carácter permanente, irrecuperables y progresivas.
Why I should have compassion for an old man when he has no compassion for young people. He has no compassion for my sister, for all my family, for my mother.
Even 20 years later, it's shocking that after a year and a half in London, that Pinochet could be released back to Chile on the basis of a psychological report that's less than 3 pages and of questionable validity.
So really just, a great job by him. This looks like a movie that, absolutely should be made and finished and would sell in a lot of markets, would be something that could be played in all kinds of international markets, in England, in Spain, and of course in Chile and South America. So he created this trailer by using some footage that they had shot. They've done all these great interviews already. And they've also shot some sort of, some B-roll and footage. But then the rest of it, he built basically from archival. So he's created this trailer that follows all these sort of ideas that we've talked about. Act 1, setting up Pinochet, right? The whole thing, just like all of them, has 3 acts, 3 pieces of music. It sets up Pinochet. It sets up this idea. It then goes into Act 2. They bring Pinochet to trial, and yet there's all kinds of problems. And then Act 3, it takes you into this end. And the big takeaway when you watch this trailer is how much this looks like a movie that would, that an effective movie. It looks like a movie that could come out and be on television in Chile right now. So the trailer becomes a piece that can now be shown to buyers, exhibitors, fundraisers, sales agents, as a way to further, get that movie out. And that's something that I'm doing more and more. And it's a big question for everybody, obviously, because we're all thinking about how do we get our movies made. That's one thing to say, well, I have a movie and it's coming out in theaters. It's another thing to say, well, I'm in the process of developing a movie and I want to get it made. So to just talk about this for a little bit, and again, I could talk for hours about fundraising trailers because there's so many different parts to it. One thing I would say is that there's really no exact approach. Whatever works for whatever helps convey the project that you're trying to make, that's your approach. If you have shot a lot of material and you have 10 hours of footage for your project and it's a documentary, great. Make a great 3 or 4 minute piece that shows all your great footage and that it becomes something that you could now share. If you, let's say, don't have any footage, we're doing sort of some sales pieces and fundraising pieces that are used with YouTube. There was somebody in our class who's developing a great series on music music from immigrants in Chile. So he didn't have much footage at all. So we went to YouTube, we found archival footage, all in an effort to sort of create this, this piece, this 3-minute piece or 2 minutes that would help show what this project was. And I have feature films that have come to me. Some of them have big actors in them that say, hey, we don't have everything right now. We're putting together a project. We have so-and-so has come on board as an attached actor. Let's put something together. And we've done all kinds of things to help try to create content to help sell movies to buyers and to help get them greenlit. And it's something that you have to just kind of say like, okay, well, we have to figure out how we're gonna do it in a way. There was a funny one I worked on just to give you a sense of like the range of these. There was a movie that came out a few years ago. It had a ton of big actors in it, and it was called Nightcrawler, right? You guys know this movie, Nightcrawler. And they asked me to put together a sales piece, a fundraising piece for this movie. And all we did is we got an interview with the actor. This is the great famous actor, Jake Gyllenhaal. And he talks about the movie, and we showed clips from other movies that this is like. And I know a lot of you guys have seen these kind of trailers. They're sometimes called rip trailers, because in the old days you would rip a DVD to show clips. So here we are. This is a famous movie called Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro. And we're showing clips of that as Jake Gyllenhaal talks about how Nightcrawler is going to be a lot like Taxi Driver. And we created this 4-minute piece that is a fundraising teaser. One of the first questions that somebody asks is like, well, is that a trailer? No, it's kind of a fundraising teaser, but it allows you to have content so that when you go into those meetings and you're trying to raise interest in your projects, you have all this content to develop. There's other filmmakers that come to me and they say, hey, we have, and this really shows you just how much these can be used. I have producers that reach out to me and they say, hey, we're working on a script. We've optioned a script that's about these lawyers, right? And they say, can you put together a trailer using clips from other movies? And I know you guys have all seen this. These are, again, called RIP trailers. And all they're doing is they're creating sort of fake trailers using footage from other movies that then accompany their screenplays. And it's a way, and again, it has little elements from other movies you've seen, but it's a way to kind of tell the story of the marketing, which is becoming more and more important in terms of the process of getting your movies made. So, and again, has a little text in it. You know, we're intercutting shots in this town. No one gets away clean, and it's sort of presenting this story. So we're doing this all the time. I mean, you know, I've worked on science fiction projects. You know, here's another one where there was a big budget science fiction movie, and they said, let's make a trailer. Actually, this is not that one. This is something else. But there's, let me see if I could find it. Here it is. This was a big science fiction movie, big budget science fiction project in development with a studio. And the studio said, why don't we cut a trailer using other science fiction movies, right? And again, I know you guys have seen these. These are kind of out there, and they've been become popular items. But this, we ripped a bunch of science fiction movies and we made a trailer to make it look like what the story was in this script. And this movie got greenlit. It was made at a $10 million budget. And I think part of it was this piece that we helped them create. The famous example that a lot of people talk about here in the United States is the series Stranger Things. I think it's probably down there. It's on Netflix. And Stranger Things was greenlit, meaning it was financed. It was agreed to be financed based on a RIP trailer, based on a trailer where they were using footage from other movies to help tell their story. So sometimes I've been in cases where they don't have anything. They don't have a RIP. They don't want to use footage from other movies. They just have archival footage. So we've created trailers using that. So there's just sort of this enormous sort of length, you know, this of how to use trailers in your own productions, whether you're in development, whether you have a film that's a finished film, whether you want to take a film to a market, and they don't always have to be finished. And that's something that more and more producers are realizing more and more. All right, we're gonna be ending our talk. I know I've been talking nonstop for 80 minutes straight without a break, without a breath, but I do want to open it up to some questions. You could ask questions on YouTube. You could ask questions in the chat, and I will try to answer some as I could. Emma is asking about the rights of material, of archive material used in these trailers. Well, Emma, that's a great question. She's asking, like, how do you have the rights to all this stuff? Well, fundraising trailers are not public. They're usually internal pieces, right, that are just being used in meetings and in development. They're not usually something that you would say and you would put on YouTube, right? You would often just have these pieces and put them, you know, use internally. So we end up just, no one really seems to have any issue about rights usage. We try to just use whatever, and everybody's aware that these are for internal use only. If you are putting it on YouTube or you're putting it on Facebook, then you're going to have some rights issues. So you have to be aware of that. And sometimes that's a case where producers say to me, okay, don't use anything from that we don't have the rights to, because we want to put this on our website or we're going to go public with it. So it all depends on how you're going to use it. Other questions? I'm sure some of you guys.
I think we are squeezing you, Jeremy, here. Vamos a estar cerrando el panel. Yo creo que esa fue la última pregunta sobre los derechos de Emma. Muchísimas gracias por tu tiempo. Sé que estás muy cuidado ahora con Sundance, que empezó recién, que era lo que hablábamos. Muchísimas gracias a las chicas de señas, a las traducciones, y quizás solo para terminar te pediría que dijeras cómo uno se comunica contigo o con la gente que realiza trailers, gente que va a los mercados, por ejemplo, a los festivales, o llegan a través de qué medio?
Sure. We work with a number of producers and distributors and filmmakers from all different countries. Anyone at any time, if you want to reach out to me, you could email me. I'll put my email here in the chat, right? And it's jeremy@wheelhousenyc.com, and you could reach out. And like I said, there was we did a great workshop in this past few weeks, and there's some great editors that came out of that workshop. So there's a lot of talent also in Chile who also would be great options if you're trying to think about, bringing on an editor for a trailer. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to sort of answer any further questions from you all.
Súper. Muchas gracias, Jeremy. Muchas gracias a todos los que están aquí. Y nos seguimos viendo. Más tarde viene la ceremonia de clausura por si quieren unirse. Y también está disponible la película de clausura, que es Cantos de Represión, que si siguen nuestras redes, CC Documental, pueden encontrarla. Nos vemos. Chao.
Bye.